It's my pleasure today to introduce our facilitator, Dr. Ed Hoffman, PMI Strategic Advisor, and he's going to get this council conversation kicked off. So without making you all wait any longer for this conversation, I will turn it over to Ed.
All right. Thanks, Holly. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good day and start of the week. I'm excited about this council conversation. It's with a longtime colleague and friend, Susan Coleman. Susan is really a change maker who's been committed to improving society through empowering women and building projects and organizations based on cultures of collaboration. She's a global leader working on issues for organizations, governments. She's been working with the United Nations, I believe, for over 20 years now, pertaining to issues related to ESG, environmental, social, and governance. She describes herself as a socialpreneur, so I'll let her describe that. She is a negotiation expert, a coach, an organizational consultant who's been making good trouble for over 30 years. In addition to the United Nations, she's worked with many international countries. She's worked with NASA, the American Express, and various organizations in almost every country around the world. Her current focus is really on empowering women through negotiation and collaboration. And she works extensively on negotiation and intercultural communication skills. So Susan, wonderful to have you. And I'll let you kind of set the stage for what you've been working on and the main emphasis. I know you have a book that you're in the process of finishing called Women, Negotiation, and Power. And I'll turn it over to you to talk about the importance of negotiation, power, and women. So Susan, welcome.
Hello to everybody. Thanks for showing up. I don't know if people are on the early side of things or later in the day or where you're hailing from, but it's great to be here with all of you. I'm going to start. It's fun doing these things because it's just an opportunity to always present things differently or think about things differently. So I'm going to start with sharing some thoughts that hopefully will stimulate your thinking. Some of the thoughts you will agree with, some of them you may not, but hopefully it will initiate a conversation that we can have so that I can hear your thoughts and ideas, which I really welcome. I've been, for the last more than 30 years, had the privilege of working with people from all over the world as a teacher, a student of negotiation, and an organization development consultant, an organizational mediator, a coach. I've worked from war zones to boardrooms to inner city public schools, and with people and organizations from just about every continent. Teaching negotiation and working organizational issues around conflict is an amazing lens to see what's going on in the world, and because people reveal themselves very quickly when there's conflict involved, even if they're coming from vastly different, or maybe if they are coming from vastly different tribes. Can everybody hear me okay, first of all?
Yes, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay. I guess I've learned from my years in the conflict resolution field that how we resolve our differences, what I call our process choice, the containers we create, has everything to do with how successful we are at reaching positive outcomes. Process, the how, the soft stuff is the stuff of the feminine. In organizational circles, you might hear the soft stuff is the hard stuff, or the future is feminine. That's simply because the power of the feminine is still to be realized to a great extent, and to a great extent is missing still in how we resolve differences in our marriages, our workplaces, our communities, and our world. So I'm a systems thinker, and I wanted to start just with invoking James Webb imagery. I don't know how many of you have been looking at some of the photos that have been coming back. Ed tells me you talked about James Webb, but oh my God, just so much awe. I get moved to tears when I see the beauty of what's coming back, just the wonderment about exactly who I am, who we are, what we're doing here. Some fear, I will admit, it's just about like, yeah, we're out here in the middle of nowhere. But certainly food for a lot of perspective. One of the things that I've been taught to do as an organizational intervener is to scan the whole system, and it's usually organizations and teams and that I'm working with. But when I scan our planetary system, I think what stands out to me is planetary warming that's happening at kind of alarming rates and threatening a lot of life. It's a scary phenomenon, I think, that we're looking at. This tension between authoritarian ways of doing things and democracy that is playing itself out around the world. Democracy is definitely on the decline, authoritarianism on the rise around the world. And then just looking at humanity, that still there's quite a gender imbalance between the genders, but a lot changing around it, and a lot of conversation around gender roles, yeah, both wanting to move women forward and also some pushback as well. I think all of these things are very related. I will admit to being worried. I'm somebody who by nature is very optimistic, but I'm feeling a lot of concern about what my children and our collective grandchildren are inheriting. I've had an amazing life, but I'm not sure what theirs is going to look like. The other night, the news dropped a small bomb between the reporting on mass shootings in the United States and then the war in Ukraine, to say that we had passed a milestone that as of May, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were more than 50 times higher than before the industrial age. And that NOAA, which is you probably know what NOAA is, was reporting that the levels of CO2 trapping heat in the atmosphere now resemble Earth 4 million years ago, when the planet was much hotter. I guess I feel like organizations are such a powerful force to hear the clarion call inherent in that information, and muster all of our creative energy. Humans, we have had an amazing capacity to pull ourselves out of a lot of real predicaments. So I guess I place a lot of faith that organizational ingenuity may be a real force for pulling us out of this one. I think this group is interested in how you create collaborative environments and ways to support diversity. I think a good place to start is narrative, the stories that we tell ourselves. And I'll continue with the theme of astrophysics, or the beginnings. One of my podcast guests, I have a podcast called the Peace Building Podcast that I started a few years ago because I have done a lot of working with large group systems, and it's been very interesting to me to see that the kind of processes that you use have a whole lot to do with how much agreement you get. So I've been interviewing people, but then I shifted to really focusing on the impact or the intervention that we could make of really getting gender right on the planet, and the shift that would create in building a more peaceful and collaborative world. But one of my podcast guests, named Rabia Roberts, was talking about astrophysicist Brian Swim, who talks about not the Big Bang. I think we often hear of it as the Big Bang, but really a more feminine phrase, I guess, the Great Effulgence, which is commonly known as the Big Bang. And he says, one of the first principles of our beginnings was differentiation, that everything differentiated, nothing was the same. It wasn't a pile of gas that evolved, it was differentiated beings, differentiated things. Differentiation is one of the main principles, my podcast guest says, in us. And when we try to establish monocultures or mono races, we are working against the fundamental principles of Earth and ourselves. Another narrative that has shaped our world and has deeply impacted our thinking is that we've always been a warring species. And actually, that couldn't be farther from the truth, that the anthropologists that I have looked at, and there are many of them, that 99% of our human history, there's no clear evidence of war, and men and women have been living together in partnership. Not that I wasn't talking about war between men and women, but men and women have been living together in partnership for vast majority of our time on Earth. And all of that often corresponded with goddess cultures, the reverence for women's ability to create life. But I think that often comes as an aha to people that, in fact, we have many more. Our history as a species where we use coercion is a blip in time compared to our ability to work together. Family organizations, again, using that systems lens, family organizations, they're really the building blocks of our world. And when kids learn in the home that one gender is more important than another, or that one gender should defer to another, that one gender should lead, or the other gender should follow, they do learn a one up, one down way of thinking that they bring into work, into the world of work, if they haven't reflected on it and changed it. And it's deep and it's hard to change. It's and I think we're all going through a introspective process about all of our acculturation, both men and women.
So Susan,
yeah,
do you want to take questions while you're introducing? Because you have one from Sadish, or do you want to finish?
Maybe hold up a minute if that's okay. And
absolutely. We'll come back to this.
Okay. Yeah, but I hope that's okay to keep your thought. And it's, basically it's created some of the social supremacies that we've been struggling with as a society, the male supremacy, white supremacy, human supremacy. It's a one up, one down way of thinking that goes to the core of whether one uses domination or coercion versus negotiation, partnership, collaboration as a way of resolving differences. I think what's important is you can't really negotiate in an authoritarian culture. You do what you're told. And that's one reason authoritarians prefer it, and sometimes managers prefer it. Collaboration, democracy, sometimes it can be very messy. But you can't really have gender equality without democracy, without participation of people over the decisions that affect us in our world. Another thing that's been interesting to me, just a few other things to stimulate your thinking, is that I have worked with a lot of groups around the world. And one of the things that is a predictable phenomenon of group dynamics is that you will find in any group people who want to change things and people who want to keep them the same. And when you look at gender in organizations and worldwide, you see that phenomenon playing out both among men and women, that there are those who want to change traditional gender roles, and there are those that want to keep them the same. Women entering the workforce has arguably been the largest shift to work over the last 50 years. It's really been enormous. Raises things like who should get the coffee, who should speak, who should lead. Everybody is learning. This is a big change, and women often feel like imposters, but we are, because actually organizations got created by men for men to bring home the bacon to their families. I have a memory of my mom and my dad were very much used traditional gender roles. My dad was dying at the time, and he had my nephew, who was a baby on his lap. And I don't think he'd ever held a baby, honestly. And my mother, I think he was totally enjoying the experience. And my mother came out of left field, came out of the kitchen and came in and swooped the baby out of his hands. It's like, nope, that's my arena. And I remember looking at my dad's surprise and thinking, well, that was interesting. So, in some instances, women are coming in and fitting into what I might call a more man mode way of doing things. Women are doing what men have traditionally done and doing it really well. And men increasingly are doing things that have been traditionally considered women's jobs, like nursing, and more at home, more childcare, house care, all of it. I consider it, I call it the big integration. But there's also something deeper going on, shifts in the what we do and how we do it. Negotiation is about substance and relationship. Good negotiators are really doing both. You know, if you're all substance and no relationship, you're often considered a son of a bitch. You get what you want at all costs. You can burn a lot of bridges, but people often think you're tough. You know, some people brand themselves as great negotiators on this style. I won't name names, but the relationships suffer. And if you're all relationship and no substance, you know, people will call you a wimp and blah, 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 blah. You might have good relationships, but the substance will suffer. And you look around the world, how we've allocated these things by gender, you know, men were supposed to focus on substance and women were supposed to focus on relationship. But that's really changing and things are really integrating. And humans, I think both men and women really want, many humans want the wholeness that's allowed to do both and have the balance between both. But there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of noise going on the planet around this because many people would like to hold on to a traditional model, both inside organizations and in the home. And of course, they're very linked. I like this quote from a documentary about Carl Jung. It said, Jung had an instinct about what was wrong with life. What made it tear apart, made it incomplete, was because the feminine was rejected, driven insane, driven mad by a world of men, rejected by a masculine dominated world. I posted on my LinkedIn, I said, you know, what does a post-patriarchal workplace look like? Anyone have thoughts about that? And one of my followers, it's been interesting in social media, some of the people that follow me the most are men, even though the people I'm my audience, well, both men and women are my audience. But the book I'm writing is definitely for women. But this guy said, I liked what he said. A post-patriarchal work, he's from Australia. A post-patriarchal workplace would be one where everyone is considered an equal regardless of gender. Men and women would receive the same pay for the same work, and there would be no glass ceiling to prevent anyone from advancing in their careers. Our inner critics would visit us less often, and we would have mutual respect and understanding for one another. Workplaces would be free of sexual harassment and discrimination, and everyone would be treated with respect. This is the kind of workplace we should all be striving for, and I'm hopeful that one day we will achieve it. So I really appreciated what he said. His name is Martin. And I think I like taking it a step further to what we are all focusing on in our work and how we are focusing on it, because I think that gender, the change that gender has brought about, bringing if you want, the feminine to work at the risk of stereotyping, I think it brings different sensibilities. For instance, many of the what organizations focus on have been really affected by women's sensibilities. Suzanne Simard comes to mind. She's what does she call herself? She works in the lumber industry, and she shifted the narrative around logging because the frame was competitive, that's how trees operate. And she brought in a whole understanding of no, there's a whole collaborative element going on here. It's changed forestry as a result. Rachel Carson, who brought the focus on the environment, an astrophysicist named Jocelyn Bell Burnell, who discovered pulsars because she said she felt like an imposter. She wouldn't have seen it otherwise. And I could go on and on and on about just the different sensibilities that I think women are bringing into organizational life. And then the how we do things. Now, you know, I've worked with a lot of people who negotiate, and I would say that, and in some of this I could back up with research, that women as a group, not all of us, appreciate collaboration. It's although our default is sometimes deferring or accommodation, which is our Achilles heel, but it's in our DNA, and we bring it to negotiation. We bring it to peace processes. Having women at the table in peace processes is like the oxygen to peace processes. We get much better results. So anyway, hopefully that's enough. I've been saying a lot and a lot of things. I hope it's stimulated some thinking on your part, and I would love to, at this moment, just open it up to conversation about about gender collaboration and work. I know I've been talking about much more than that, but what you'd like to say, what you might have.
So you have some questions already on the chat, and I'd encourage people to obviously use the chat, but also interact with Susan verbally coming on. But one of the first question was from Satish, who said the more we pay attention to discrimination, whether it's gender, race, or anything else, and do focused activities to eliminate these to create level playing fields, the more amplified the problems turn out to be. This is very paradoxical. What's your take on the course of action? So the more we focus on it, the bigger the problem tends to amplify. Any thoughts on that, Susan?
Yeah, now who said that? I just want to see the person. Where are they? Who was that?
Are you looking at on the screen? That's Satish.
Satish, where is he? Oh, there he is. Is it he? I think it's a he. And I don't know if you want to show me your videos, that would be lovely, but you don't have to. Hey, is that Satish? Hi there. Hi. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think
I'm sitting in office, so that's the reason I thought I'd turn off the video because it's an open space.
Yeah, no, it's okay, but it's lovely to see your face. Thanks we're getting a little bit of a feedback, but we'll just put up with that. I really appreciate your question, because, and that's sort of why I started with big thinking, you know, with astrophysics and sort of big planetary scans, because I think this is an enormous topic. And I mean, I don't know about your life, but it shows up not just in my work, but, you know, it's in my family life, and watching all the different gender acculturations that we've all had. And some of it works for us and some of it's causing conflict. And what's interesting about organizations, though, I think, is that while it's more difficult sometimes, you know, to get people to go to therapy, you know, people's traditional ways of dealing with this at the family level is to go to therapy. And it's usually women that are pulling men into therapy. That's usually the way it goes down. But organizations have all these capacities for training, for conversation, for teamwork. And in some ways, they're some of the greatest teachers. But I have no illusions. I think you're probably right. The minute you open this can of worms, it's like opening Pandora's box. It's a huge thing. I mean, there's just a lot to say about it, and there's a lot to say about it from men and women alike, because I think men have been as you know, straitjacketed by gender roles as women have been. And some there are many men that really welcome the ability to just loosen that up, and there are men that don't like that, and there are women who don't like that. In fact, I think women as a group we generally are the ones that are the greatest enforcers of traditional gender roles, more than men. I will say one more thing about that, which is that when I did an intervention with, we had two factions of Kurds that were in armed conflict that came to the United States. And when I was given the list of people that were coming, I noticed that there was not one woman on the list. And I mentioned it to the Kurdish representatives, and a woman was added to the list. But the people that didn't want her to come were her mother and her grandmother. It was the father that intervened and said, she needs this opportunity. This is a wonderful opportunity for her. But the mother and the grandmother were like, over our dead bodies, but the father prevailed. So, and in fact, I found that also true. I was working with women leaders in Afghanistan. And it was interesting hearing their stories because they were women at the top of the government in Afghanistan. And all of them had fathers, in fact, that were really advocating for them. I think it often has been men that have opened the doors around gender equality. Not that women are not doing it too, at all, both, but yeah. So other thoughts, comments from-
You have a question also, and then I'd encourage others to maybe start coming on screen and talking to you. But Barbara says, is there a risk that with women focusing more on substance to be successful in the working world, that our world will have less focus on relationship? And how do we evolve women in the workplace with more respect for the importance of relationship? Yeah. So you talked about substance and relationship. And
no, I love that question. I love that question because I think some of what's needed and is that, well, I think that balancing of, substance and relationship. And I do think that, always at the risk of stereotype, but I think that women often do bring a DNA of caring for the other, of communication, of connection, of wanting to be able to feel. And a lot of that is, I think, what men really welcome when they have it. So I think some of it has to do with confidence for women. We are relative newcomers to the workplace. Even though it doesn't seem that new, we're still relative newcomers. And so finding our stride, finding our confidence of what our voice, one of the things that patriarchy has done to humans is that and patriarchy is not, it's 6,000, 7,000 years old. It has not been around forever, but it has really silenced women. It has nurtured violence in men and created silence in women. And so one of the ways to shift that, I think, is women really connecting to our voices. What is it that we really want to say? If we are to speak, what is it that what we want to say? What does leadership really look like? What do workplaces, if we were to invent workplaces with our own sensibilities, what would that look like? What would we do? They're really interesting questions to ask ourselves. And they're big questions. They're not easy questions. They're very creative, interesting questions, I think.
So let me ask you a question, and then we'll look to see some others interact. You've worked in dangerous spots. I know you work with the United Nations. You've worked on a societal level more than most, I think, and you've dealt with situations and sides where people don't want to change for a variety of reasons. How do you get the conversation started when there are very different views as to where to go and how to get started? That to me is usually the difficult part, right? When there's great differences, we don't want to talk. So how have you worked that in your most difficult situations?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I have almost without exception, when I've done a lot of organizational retreats, and there's always been, conflict that has precipitated, a lot of time there's been some conflict precipitating the reason for the retreat. And some of these retreats have been with leaders from different countries. Some of them been within teams. They've been all different kinds of levels of organizational system. But almost without exception, people have said at the beginning, oh, no one will talk. No one is gonna talk. I promise you. And I think I have a 100% batting average. They always talk. Yeah. And I think it has to do with what kind of container you create, what kind of process you set up who you get into the room. You know, a lot of negotiation principles apply. How you do the pre-work around it. How, you know, how you create a climate where people actually feel able to talk and able. I mean, I will say that I think, you know, some of our parliamentary processes, while they are important for democracy, they are not always great for communication, because I think you create different kinds of processes, different kind of structures, and humans are very good at dealing with all kinds of complexity and conflict if you give them the right parameters. I mean, I think I probably told this story in a different PMI setting. I don't know. But there was, we were doing work with the New York City public school system. That is a huge, I think it's the largest school system, maybe in the, I don't know, definitely in the country, maybe, I don't know, in the world, it's huge. And there was a lot of racial conflict going on. And I had a partner who was dealing with one group of 40 and I was dealing with another group of 40. And he started, and he's wonderful. I mean, he's one of my closest colleagues. But he started his group with a prisoner's dilemma game. We were using negotiation stuff and conflict stuff. He started with a prisoner's dilemma game, and I see Ed shaking his head.
Yeah.
Done prisoner's dilemma games. You know that people can get really angry with each other really fast. It can create a very, even though this is fiction and you're not, you know, this is not real world, the group that you're in, it's a training environment, but people can get really pissed off at each other, excuse my language. And I started with one that was much more about building a culture of safety, of collaboration, you know, warming the group up. And again, completely the same demographics in both groups. The racial issues completely blew up in his group, did not blow up in mine at all. And that has borne itself out in research that I've looked at and other things. I think one of the things that's really interesting about intercultural polarization is that it has more to do often with the conflict culture, the culture of collaboration or adversarial nature, the amount of trust that people feel in the system or lack of trust. And if it's very competitive and adversarial, you will often see people polarize around these identity groups in systems. And now I've lost the question. I hope that was the answer to a question.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, so, I mean, my question is, when you have deeply ingrained differences,
Yeah.
which seems to be more and more the case, how do you get it started? And it sounds like what I hear you saying is, if you create the right space, people will talk, and that's the starting point.
Totally.
And
I
that's
mean,
always been the case.
I think that one of the things that's going on in the United States, I don't know how many people are from the United States, but oh my God, the news media is just, you know, they're just fanning the flames of polarization. And it's frustrating to many of us that are in the conflict resolution field watching it, because I think humans can handle a lot of these differences very well. It's not innate to us that we're this polarized. And and also I do think it has something to do with ultimate political agendas of some, because if you create a lot of havoc, you can manage, you can get your way with things, rather than if you create a more peaceful environment. So.
And so you have an interesting comment on chat from Anne, who retired as a colonel in the U.S. Army and quickly learned the importance of negotiation skills in order to thrive and survive. And she asked, do you have observations of women in the military and how their experiences might demonstrate the confidence phenomenon you just mentioned? And she gives the background as to her career and the importance of gaining a strength and learning the importance of negotiation to be successful. So any experiences in terms of that confidence phenomenon that you talked about regarding negotiation?
Yeah, well, I almost want to turn the question back to you because I have tremendous respect for women in the military, and you know, there's probably no one answer, but yeah, I do. Do you have any thoughts about it? Because I bet you have a lot of experience. I'd love to hear any of your comments about it. Oh, your voice, your sound.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Nope, still on mute. Technology.
Need to go to mission control.
Can the host unmute? She's saying, can the host unmute her?
Holly, are we able to do anything or?
Yeah, that.
I'm looking. I don't
Yeah.
see that
It usually
option.
shows, did you go to participants and see under participants?
Yeah.
No?
I don't see an option to unmute. And I actually see it on other people who are
Yeah.
muted.
Okay.
So
Well, anyway, I don't know either. I will say, in any comment, can you put anything in the chat?
Yeah, she's gonna.
Yeah, sorry guys, there's no way to unmute her for some reason.
That's weird. It's just a funny thing.
Yeah.
But I guess she's going to say something in the chat. And the U.S. Army in the early 80s was promoted as all equal, and it tried to be. Yeah. And I have a feeling she's going to say something else. Is that true? Yes. So we trained together and fought together and slept together. Not in a not in a conjugal sense. Oh well, that's too bad. Just kidding. That just in a practical go to war way. What an experience, yeah.
So if you learn together, you work together, you spend time eating together and drinking together.
And it really broke
yeah.
down a lot of the barriers between genders. I bet it did. I bet it did. You know, I mean, the thing is in general, about humans is, of course, we are so much more alike than we are different. I'm not saying that men and women aren't different. I do think we have different hormones, as we all had to learn to get along and drop false gender pretenses. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a learning. I mean, it's just a learning with my boyfriend. I mean, you know, I'm in a relationship with a man. We're just constantly learning about all of this acculturation and shifting gender roles and assumptions. And even though I am a, you know, strong feminist, been thinking about this stuff for a long time, I sometimes stun myself with how traditional I am about some of my thinking. Then she goes, not to suggest that gender differences are not real, they are, but to meet mission, you have to set aside certain mores. Yeah, I mean, I often wonder, because I live across the road from West Point, and I think about it when, and then when people learn, work, and socialize together, they change. Yeah, I often do wonder about, and I don't know if you have anything to say about this, about, you know, I'm a very strong woman. I'm very athletic. I'm very capable physically and always have been. I'm more capable than many men in my life. Yeah, she too, I can see that. But I often wonder, like when I hear about the stuff that the plebes have to go through over at West Point, I think, oh my gosh, how does this show up in the differences between men and women? How does the physical, you know, the musculature, how does that affect what happens between you? I don't know what your experience was around that, and not to make assumptions about who's stronger and who's, you know, whatever. But yeah, did you have any experience around that on the physical level? Earlier in the military, physical standards were different. Yeah. as time went on, the thinking around actual physiological differences evolved. No, don't worry about your spelling. Yeah. Mhm. Sorry. So some tasks had to be done identically by men and women. Others were differentiated. And probably then there's other things. I do think that there's things about women often, I think maybe we can go farther, men can go stronger and shorter, those kinds of things that probably can be, used well by the military, the more they understand people's different bodies and all of that. Yeah. Yeah, mostly around tasks involving overhead, upper body strength. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Anne. I really appreciate it. I'd love to talk to you more. And I'm sorry we can't hear you. I would like to hear you. So anybody else want to get their voices into this conversation about any and all of the above? Any thoughts about this? How you're dealing with gender in your workplaces, how you're dealing with the opportunities, the threats, the challenges, what we say in the conflict resolution field also is that it's always, she's saying more respectful, understanding health differences now. That's a typo now, something a day. Nowadays, I see nowadays. Yeah, probably much more understanding. Yeah. So any other comments from folks about this topic, about your personal experiences with how I'm just looking at the names. It seems like we sort of have a blend of men and women, and I'm sure all of you are dealing with the topic of gender. I do a lot of consulting with the IMF these days, and that it's very much a topic of conversation among people, and about voice, about who speaks, about who leads, and all of those kinds of things. So I don't know, any other comments that people would like to make? How do we create, here's one from Jim. Where are you, Jim? There you are. How to create that safe healing environment at scale. The voices we tend to hear most often are those at the more extreme edges. The healing processes can work well in small, intimate groups. However, I feel we need to do something at a much greater scale to really make a difference in reducing the distance between these polarized views. Media tend to chase a headline, and politicians tend to focus on their short-term. Neutral organizations such as the United Nations have a bigger role, not just focusing on areas with current military conflicts. Yeah, very important comment. And I think my comment about that, I'll go back to astrophysics, or just, zooming back, is just, is narrative, what we're telling ourselves about all this, the stories we tell ourselves. And I do think there's a big integration going on with a lot of opportunity for both men and women, for girls and boys, for humanity. And I do think it does feel urgent to me. It feels like we, for some reason, this topic is very up for us at a time when also climate is up for us, violence is up for us. I think they're all things that are very related. And I don't know, I know lots of different things are happening in different organizations. Some are doing some of the, like when Citibank basically started creating transparency around pay. That was an enormous, it was really a great service to a lot of organizations. They just did it. And, organizations have the power to do stuff like that really can make a difference. But I don't think I think at the end of the day, all of us have a lot of both inner and outer work to do around this, and hopefully can make it fun and interesting rather than painful. I think in our society, it's gotten all this stuff around difference, it's gotten painful on some level. But yeah, other comments?
So we have the last 10 minutes. So I'll encourage people to come out now to ask anything they have. Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah.
about the book, which you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
women, negotiations and power.
It's
What's
called Women.
yeah.
It's a little bit of an edgy title at the moment. It's called Women, Negotiation, and Power: Dismantling Patriarchy One Negotiation at a Time. It's kind of a, if anybody read the book Getting to Yes, it's kind of a getting to yes for women. It's written to women. But I think, as my boyfriend says, can I read it? I said, of course you can read it, because I think men have a lot to say about this. But I'm writing it to women. It's really in 3 parts. It's about all, it's sort of past, present, and future. It's all of the, because I think the reality is one of the things that gives you power in negotiation is something called your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, and your walkaway position. And patriarchy or our societal norms have influenced what our walkaway positions are for women. So it starts with sort of a lot of context and ground about our bodies, about money, around sexuality, around codependence, because there's sort of a large global scourge of codependence on the planet, and about our collaborative past, and about our collective landscape. And then it gets into what I call the nitty-gritty of negotiation, all of the stuff that the skills, tools, techniques that we need to know, of what competition looks like from a negotiation point of view, what collaboration looks like from a negotiation point of view, positions versus underlying interest, taking an interest-based or a needs-based lens to things, which is hugely important, reframing, communication skills. You can, learning both collaborative and competitive communication skills, and dealing with difficult conversations, and also something I call playing collaborative hardball. I take a pretty principled stance that I ultimately really feel that collaboration is the better methodology. Not that there aren't times to be competitive, and that women have the potential here of really leading the way with a collaborative leadership style, and that the skills of negotiation are the essence of that. And then moving into the future, then a new world emerging, both home, work, and world, dismantling patriarchy at home, dismantling patriarchy at work, and then women, negotiation, and peace is the last chapter. So that's the book. It's kind of a big undertaking. It's right now with an editor, and
Sounds like something I would want to read.
yeah, I hope so. I hope.
Okay.
So.
I'm looking for hands or questions, but I'll ask another, and we'll probably have time for one more after this. I know you come things from a win-win collaborative standpoint. What do you see as the impact on young men, teenagers, starting in the workplace? It's a totally different world, I think, for boys becoming men than how things are changing. And so if there's confusion for women, there's probably also confusion for men. Any thoughts on that? Yeah,
it's such a great question. I am blessed with having both a daughter and a son, and and they are my greatest teachers. Honestly, these two are constantly pushing the edge of the envelope with me around gender, and my son is a very gender progressive guy. He's a mountaineer. He guides people up on glaciers, which doesn't always make me feel comfortable. But that's another topic. But way more, I think both of them have so taken on. Well, what can I say? I think it's a complicated time to be. He particularly is a tall white guy, and I think it's a complicated time to be a tall white guy in probably in this country, maybe in the world, but with a lot of opportunity and a lot of ability to speak. But there's been traditionally, I think I hear from many parents of younger men that some of them feel a little bit lost, like, where do I fit exactly now? What should I do exactly now? This is a different world. But that's not to say that it's been complicated for people from lots of different groups for a long time. So to answer your question, Ed, I just think it's it's one that's close to my heart because my son is so close to my heart. And I do think it's, those who have had what I'd call false empowerment, in the sense that as a society, we have privileged them. And that actually doesn't really encourage people to feel real self-esteem. People feel self-esteem when they know it's authentic to them. It's not just that it was conferred onto them. So I think that's the opportunity for all of us, is to find the paths that give us, that are truly about us, the offering that we can bring to whatever our workplaces, our teams, that aren't based on any certain kind of privileges, but that really have to do with who we are as humans.
Yeah. So there are the opportunities as well as the challenge. Often where there are great challenges, I always saw in the work I did, is when there were problems they were confident about talking to, there were great challenges that led to the opportunities for a better future. So we can be optimistic about that, perhaps.
Yeah. What do they say? I don't think we change without,
Right.
those difficulties. It takes a
The
lot
problem.
of, takes a lot of pounding to create a good bar of steel, as they say, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Final minute. Anyone want to say something or ask a question? I would encourage you. I've learned so much from working with Susan and having dinners at nice places over the last 20 years that it's someone you can learn from, interact with, just have a good time with. So I encourage you to reach out to Susan.
Yeah, if you're interested in, speaking engagements, I really like doing those. If you like the ideas of facilitated dialogue in your organizations with both genders or with just groups of women, facilitated large group processes, organizational change initiatives, all those kinds of things are things that I feel really comfortable with. And if I can be helpful to you, I'd be glad to do it.
Espérate.
And if you please join my community at susancoleman.global. Would love to have you continue to engage. And I hope I hope it's been stimulating and got you thinking. And yeah, I wish I had like really simple answers to all of this, but I do think it's a big, interesting conversation that we're all in on this planet at this point in time.
Yeah, you can't have simple questions for complex, simple answers to complex questions don't usually work.
Yeah.
Thank you. Always delightful, Susan.
Thank you.
And we'll stay connected, obviously, with you in Polarity. And let us turn it back to Holly.
Great, thank you. Thank you both very much, Susan and Ed. That was really amazing. I think my favorite new expression is collaborative hardball. I really like that. I had not heard that before, but I think
that one. I like that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I do appreciate, highlighting some things that, that I might not be aware of that could contribute to my own bias and how I view society. And Ed, thank you for that last question. As a mother of a teenage boy, I'm interested in how society is, how we're raising our children and what the impact of that's going to be like. But I do like the positive note you left us on, Ed, about being optimistic on the future, since we can control our own destiny.
Yep.
So this has raised a lot of really interesting facts I'd like to dig into deeper. So Susan, thank you very, very much. Thank you, Ed, for leading the conversation. And thank you everyone for joining. I appreciate that. And looking forward to seeing you on our next council conversation, July 21st. Hope everyone has a lovely day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Thank y'all.